Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. My name is Sharon Angley, and I'm the president of the Hoboken Board of Education. I've lived in Hoboken for 20 years, was first elected to the Board of Ed in 2015, and have 3 children in the Hoboken Public School District. 1 at Hoboken High School, 1 at Hoboken Middle School, and 1 at Wallace Elementary School. With me tonight are 3 of my board colleagues. I will turn it over to them to introduce themselves.
Hi, good evening. This is Melanie Takarian. I am also a trustee of the Board of Education, Hoboken resident since 2003, although I was here for a few years right after college, a little bit earlier. I am the proud parent of a Hoboken Middle School student and who has also gone through Wallace and Demarest for pre-K. Maybe I'll hand it off to Alex.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Alex de la Torre. I am a 15-year resident of Hoboken. Currently, I have a freshman at Hoboken High School and a middle schooler, a 7th grader at Hoboken Middle. I believe, Aileen, you're next.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us tonight. My name is Aileen McGurk, a trustee for the Hoboken Board of Education, and a proud parent of 2 daughters at Thomas G. Connors Elementary School, a 4th grader and a kindergartner.
Thank you. Tonight, you will have the opportunity to view a video on these conceptual renderings of the proposed facility, and will have the opportunity to hear about the project. With us tonight to answer your questions after the presentation are the professionals associated with the project. We have our district architects of record, Frank Tedesco and Eric Wood from the Mount Vernon Group, our financial advisors from NW Financial, Doug Bacher and Risha Prasad. From our bond counsel, Willents, we have Tony Salamine. And from the district, we have facilities director, Mr. Tim Callaghy, Hoboken High School principal, Ms. Robin Picapietra, and district athletic director, Mr. Jack Baker. During the first portion of the webinar, you will be provided background on the district's long-range facilities plan that the state of New Jersey accepted from the district last year. And how we got to this referendum. After we view the video and hear about the project, board member De La Torre will touch upon some facts regarding the referendum, and board member Takarian will explain the flow of the meeting for questions and answers. Before we get started, 2 final points of order. First, I would like to clarify the role of the Board of Education for those who may not be as familiar with the BOE versus the City Council. The BOE is charged with making sure that every enrolled student receives a thorough and efficient education, and that includes facilities for education. The long-range facilities plan is a portion of that responsibility, and this plan has been developed appropriately and approved by the New Jersey Department of Education. Board of Ed members are elected locally, but have a very different function than your city council representatives. We are community representatives who have to listen to all constituents, but furthermore, local school board members are state representatives. We are empowered by the state law to perform a state function, governing the public schools at the local level. With all of that being said, let's begin.
The Hoboken Public School District will be presenting a referendum to the residents of Hoboken on Tuesday, January 25th. The ballot question will ask voters to consider the construction of a new high school on the current site of the JFK Stadium. The plan is for the Board of Education owned property to house a 374,000 plus square foot high school equipped with classrooms, science labs, fine and performing arts suites, theaters, 6 vocational program areas, a library media center, athletic and fitness facilities, parking, and so much more. The most up-to-date technology infrastructure and tools will support education, while planned safety and security measures will exceed New Jersey School District requirements. The beautiful Columbus Park, owned and maintained by Hudson County, has room to stroll, relax on a bench, and play. The district's proposal will not eliminate the gazebo, popular water play feature, playground, or bathrooms. While the district's basketball and tennis courts will be replaced per this plan, the 2 county tennis courts will be shifted down into those spaces and expanded to become regulation size all-weather tennis courts. These courts will remain open to the public and permitted for use by Hudson County. The 10th Street entrance to the school building is designed for community access to the pool, community learning center, ice rink, and auxiliary gym. It is also the entrance to the stadium with elevator access and seating for 1,550 spectators. It is designed for rooftop competition and play. The turf field is lined for football, soccer, baseball, softball, and lacrosse. The track and new spaces for field events will enable the Red Wings track team to host meets. The district will ensure that there are dedicated times for the community to use the track for personal fitness. Sitting just below the stadium is a gathering area, concession stand, team and locker rooms, and a weight room. Jefferson Street is home to the school's main entryway. It is handicap accessible and raised 15 feet to accommodate stormwater detention tanks and a parking garage equipped with 110 spaces, storage for bikes, and electric charging stations. Let's take a walk into the school. Take notice of the Hudson River waterfront along the floor, and to the left, a music suite to support the marching and concert bands, orchestra, and chorus, along with courses that round out a rich music curriculum. The community wing of the school is designed to be used by students for both curricular and co-curricular purposes. In addition to outdoor sports, Hoboken High School has basketball, wrestling, ice hockey, indoor track, bowling, swim, esports, and volleyball teams that round out the indoor sports program. The community wing of the school is also intended for use by residents before and after school hours, on the weekends, and throughout the summer. This wing includes a regulation-size ice rink with seating for 500, an aquatic center with a 6-lane pool and seating for 300, and an auxiliary gym that is suitable for activities such as basketball, wrestling, volleyball, pickleball, and even indoor soccer for little ones. This space, along with those in the existing high school, expands so many possibilities for both our district and the community at large. Located in this wing, there is also a community learning center dedicated to things such as courses, book talks, hands-on experiences, mommy and me type classes, meetings, and senior citizen activities. Just think about the possibility of summer camps, highly sought after youth programs within walking distance, and adult programs for the mind and body. The sky really is the limit for the community wing of this proposed new high school. In fact, the Board of Education plans to assemble an ad hoc committee to discuss ways to best open these spaces to community members. There is no reason that this new facility cannot serve as the hub of this incredible city. Hoboken High School's innovative curriculum includes academic spaces to enhance overall learning and bring authentic and realistic experiences into the classroom. Adding to courses that may already exist in the program of studies, take, for example, a meteorology and climate risk management program in the Science on a Sphere laboratory. What an amazing opportunity for students. Heading back down the wide staircase overlooking the main entryway, check out the collegiate-style cafeteria. With a variety of seating areas, here, students will be served hot and cold nutritious meals. The Hoboken Public School District serves breakfast and lunch and will return to serving dinner in the very near future. Not only will this space service all of the school's lunch periods, it will also serve as a large school community space for special events, award banquets, commemorative programs, and a venue for culinary arts program students to showcase their creations. The lecture hall and black box theater will highlight recitals, small dramatic productions, shows, author visits, and academic assemblies. This space is created for 295 guests using stadium seating for optimal viewing. The set design studio behind the black box theater will provide students interested in a theater design and technology program the perfect opportunity to learn, create, and apply in a real-world setting. It also has the potential to serve as the viewing location for cinematography and film production class projects and course assessments in the dramatic arts. Right around the corner sits the two-tiered auditorium designed with Hoboken High School state and international award-winning theater program in mind. This dynamic space, designed for 800, is set to feature Hoboken High School's musical and dramatic productions, as well as the district musical that showcases students in grades K through 12. In addition to the theater department's use of the auditorium, it is large enough to accommodate elementary, middle, and high school concerts, honor society inductions, school-wide assemblies, and cultural arts programs. Walking down the hallway into the common area, take notice of the Wellness Center, the Culinary Arts Kitchen and Classroom, the gymnasium, and the school store. The gymnasium is the hub for high school spirit. Physical education classes will be held in this gym, along with junior varsity and varsity sports, school dances, pep rallies, and community-wide clinics, just to name a few. The newly proposed high school building contains 27 general education classrooms and 11 specialized classrooms for the purpose of STEM learning and college, career, and technical readiness. These include a print media and graphic design classroom, a debate team studio for Harvard Model Congress and Model UN, computer science and IT labs, 2 art studios, and a TV and film production studio. The general education classrooms house all of the college preparatory, pre-advanced placement, and advanced placement courses. Hoboken High School currently runs 20 pre-AP and AP courses. There are also 6 special education classrooms, 8 general science labs, and 6 team rooms for small group projects. Did you know that Hoboken High School offers a comprehensive engineering program? Biomedical science is a wildly popular program among Hoboken High School students. The planned biomedical science lab includes the technology needed for courses such as biomedical innovation and equipment for hands-on experiments in the human body systems class and the medical interventions course. Another specialized classroom is the aquaponics lab. In this setting, students have room and all of the necessary tools to initiate fish farming to supply nutrients to hydroponic plants without the use of soil and to study the efficiency and sustainability of this method of food growth. The possibilities associated with this lab are endless. The 7,714 square foot library media center in this proposed new high school project is identified as the Collaborative Learning and Activity Center. This new age space overlooks the stadium, and its wall of windows provides excellent light for a conducive learning environment. There are ample spaces for students to work either independently or with others. They may conduct digital research or choose to reach for both classic and contemporary literature. The collegiate style space will prepare students for their next journey while enhancing their high school curricular experience. The Hoboken Public School District's proposed referendum for a new high school is part of a larger long-range facilities plan. If approved, the Hoboken Public School District will position itself for the future by adding an additional elementary school housed in the Demarest building, relocate the middle school students to the existing high school, and transition the grades 9 through 12 students to this proposed new high school. Work would begin in the latter half of 2022 and be completed in time for the opening of the 2025-2026 school year.
All right, now I will turn it over to Board Trustee Mr. Della Torre.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you again for joining us here tonight. Before we begin, we wanted to address the misinformation being spread around the referendum as we approach January 25th. You may see things on social media or receive literature in the mail asking you to vote a certain way. Please be aware that no matter how these groups may represent themselves, none of this is coming from the Board of Education. As an example, there is an active social media group under the name Hoboken for Public Schools, reaching out to community members via text. This entity is in no way associated with the Hoboken Public School District. While certain groups and individuals will continue to spread falsehoods over the coming days, I'd like to take the opportunity to share some facts with you this evening. First, let me begin by addressing the tax impact of the proposed referendum. If this referendum passes, it does not mean that your taxes will result in a 20% tax increase. If this referendum does pass, it means that your school taxes are likely to go up approximately 6%. The resulting tax impact is based on the assessed value of your property, not market value or resale value. What that means is that for every $100,000 of assessed value of your property, the anticipated annual tax increase would be approximately $93.33. As an example, a 2-bedroom apartment with a market value of $1 million, but an assessed value of $778,000, the anticipated tax increase is about $726 per year, which is a 5.8% increase in property taxes, not a 20% increase. If you're in a piloted building or in property owned by the housing authority, this referendum will not affect your taxes or in any other payments you make in rent, because these properties are currently exempt from paying any school-related taxes. Next, please let me address enrollment. Fact: enrollment at Hoboken High School is not declining. Fact: district elementary schools and Hoboken Middle School are at, over, or near capacity. Fact: the 2021-2022 freshman class is the largest the district has seen in over 10 years, with a student body of approximately 166 students, which is over 60% larger than the 2020-2021 graduating class. Fact: over the last 10 years, district enrollment has grown 27%, with K-5 enrollment up 57% for that same time period. Fact: although the New Jersey Department of Education does project enrollment in all districts, including ours and each of the city's charter schools, in order to determine funding for any given school year, it is a projection only, performed solely by the NJDOE using its own methods. The NJDOE does not correct their projections, which are frequently under and sometimes overestimated. Based on the 2021 demographic study, district enrollment is projected to grow more than 30% by the 2030-2031 school year, which is only 8 years away. This study does not include increased student enrollment that will result from the Northwest development or development at the New Jersey Transit Rail Yard. Fact: the demographic study performed to assess needs and available on our district homepage shows the actual historical numbers for enrollment in this district from school year 2020-2021 backwards, measured as of March of each school year. Now, a few facts about process. 1, the Board of Education has a duty to provide a thorough and efficient education for all Hoboken Public School District students and is open enrollment year-round. That includes putting a roof over their heads and providing the proper facilities for students to learn. 2, with 3 of the district schools over 100 years old and 2 over 50 years old, the board has discussed long-range facilities planning for quite some time and to address the changes in education in the last half century. It is our job to do so. 3, bidding process. If this referendum is approved, per board policy, bid specifications will be prepared and/or are coordinated by the school business administrator/board secretary. Each bid specification will offer a common standard of competition, and will assert the board's right to accept reasonable equivalents and to reject all bids and re-advertise. 4, bids are reviewed and chosen by a subcommittee of the Board of Education that will likely include the superintendent, business administrator, the director of facilities, and 3 to 4 trustees, and then recommend for adoption by the entire board. There is no municipal government involvement in this process, including from the mayor's office, city council, or individual city council members. 5, contracts will be awarded on a resolution duly adopted by the board to the lowest responsible bidder who submits the lowest responsible bid, except that the board may choose to reject all bids, to re-advertise, or to purchase under a state contract. The board may disqualify a bidder who would otherwise be determined to be the lowest responsible bidder in accordance with NJSA 18A 18A-4. Whenever 2 or more bids are the lowest bid submitted by responsible bidders, the board shall determine to which bidder the contract will be awarded. Finally, I will address the growing questions over operating costs. At this time, the board will not undertake a detailed operating budget before a referendum of this sort has been voted upon. The district does not generally undertake to project a budget 3 to 5 years in advance. If this project is approved by the voters, the district is not likely to see any operating costs until at least 2026 because 1, the project itself will not be completed until 2025, 3 years from now. And 2, once the project is completed, we anticipate that the SDA would take the Demarest building offline for renovation, which would not be completed until at least 2026 or so, about 5 years from now. The proposed new facility will be LEED Gold with energy efficiencies that the current district buildings do not have and contains amenities that are not otherwise available in Hoboken and will bring revenue to the district. The board believes the operation of the new facility will ultimately be absorbed by the district's operating budget and that it will be supplemented by the revenue generated by the amenities included in this project, as well as potential savings realized through the building's efficiencies and other district-wide savings made possible by the project. The board believes that any increased operating costs would be manageable without program cuts, given the inherent efficiencies and other aspects of the new building. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to go back and clarify the first 2 points that Mr. Delatorre made regarding the tax impact. If the referendum passes, it does not mean that your taxes will result in a 20% tax increase. If the referendum does pass, it does mean that your total property taxes are likely to go up approximately 6%. Okay, now we'll move on to Ms. Takirian. Would you like to describe and transition us into the Q&A portion of our meeting?
Sure, thanks, Ms. Angley. So at this time, we're going to move into the Q&A portion of our meeting. Folks have already been asking questions, so thanks for that as we go. And you've been seeing some answers coming across in the chat. All the attendees here are welcome and encouraged to ask questions of our professionals that are here today through the chat. We're going to do our best to answer all the questions tonight. But for those questions that aren't answered tonight, we will address them through the referendum FAQ, which can be found on the district's homepage. Our plan is to have the Q&A portion of our meeting run for about 1 hour. So definitely encourage those of you on to ask your questions, and they'll be directed to the appropriate person on the call today.
Okay, so let's see. The first question is, why was the public not made aware of the planning for this project until after the November election? The board did not have approvals for this referendum prior to the November election, so it was not possible to put on the ballot. The next question is, what is the contingency plan if this high school does not go through? What would become of the existing high school? Would the field be offered for sale to a developer if the high school is built in a different location? Let's see, who might be best? There is no contingency plan right now. This is the plan. It is up for a vote on January 25th. And depending on how that vote goes will be indicative of next steps. The board has to wait 1 year before a plan can be put back onto a ballot. Okay, let's see, next question. What are some of the safety features this building will offer, especially regarding lockdowns? Mr. Callaghy, would you be able to address that question?
Safety features involved in this project. First of all of the entryways will be electronically controlled from the security office at the front of the facility. Glass will be shatterproof, bulletproof glass on all outside walls and all outside classroom windows. There will be lockdown procedures and lockdown accommodations in place that will meet all current safety standards. And quite honestly, I don't want to detail the safety methodology that we'll be using in the school, but I can tell you that it will meet and exceed all current safety standards.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Was having some of the larger facilities housed in the Northwest Resiliency Park ever explored? Mr. Callaghy, do you want to take this one as well? Because I think this dates us back to maybe the first time that the SDA was thinking about building a new high school in Hoboken.
In approximately 2004, the district and the SDA proposed building a high school and an elementary school on the property that is now the Northwest Resiliency Park. After a hearing and a public presentation on that plan, there was significant community opposition to the project because there was no housing, no room built into the project for other schools in the city. After that hearing, the SDA pulled the funding from the project and reallocated that funding to another district.
Thank you. Accuracy of the cost estimate. Is the cost estimate based on architectural drawings that are 100% complete? If the design is not 100% complete, what is the percentage? I think this might be a question for our architects and possibly our financial advisors, if you could both chime in.
Yes, this is Frank Tedesco, Mount Vernon Group. The documents are at the schematic design stage, and it's rather significant amount of work done on them. This is a common procedure for creating detailed cost estimates based on schematic design, as most things are identified. We have narratives for every single system that's being used in the project. And so because it's not 100% complete, we put in contingencies and what we call design contingency, meaning that, as the design progresses, that you would have that. We have that in there, and we feel that the cost estimate is very accurate. It looks like we're going to be coming in at about almost $500 a square foot, which is right in line with what's happening in high schools all in the Northeast. So we feel very confident about that. In addition to that, We have a project contingency of some 27 million. That would be just in case, because we're so uncertain about inflation in the coming year, and that would cover that. If it's not used, it goes back to the taxpayers.
Thank you. Let's see, next question. Can you please provide some context for the protocols and processes for the long-range facilities plan? Oh, I'm sorry. I think that one was already answered. Next, if the referendum doesn't pass, well, actually, let's go back to that one since, you know, it may have been private messaged, but Mr. Callaghy, would you just be able to touch on the long range facilities plan, how often we have to submit it to the Department of Education?
The long-range facility plan has to be revisited every 5 years or whenever a significant modification to the plan is being made. So this year we were at our 5-year mark, and we also had a significant modification. So we just had our long-range facility plan reviewed and approved.
Thank you. If the referendum doesn't pass, will another space be considered? Can you explain again about which spaces were considered and why rejected? Like I said, there is not a contingency plan at this point in time. The board has ruled out land acquisition due to the expense associated with it. I can speak to alternatives that have been explored in the past. As Mr. Callaghy mentioned, at one point in time, the SDA was thinking about building a new high school in Hoboken. And due to the circumstances that he described tonight, funding was reallocated to another district. The district has had conversations with developers, which have ended unsuccessfully. The district has also explored building on the backside of Wallace, on the Connors Playground, building up at the high school. And included in our FAQ online goes into all of the detail about why each of those scenarios were not feasible. Things that the district has done to address enrollment growth and to alleviate spatial issues has been to move the 6th grade from the elementary schools to the Hoboken Middle School. 39 pre-K classrooms have been moved to non-district locations, and Calabro has become an early childhood learning center with 10 pre-K classrooms housed there. Next question. Of the current student population, what percentage are Hoboken residents? Ms. Picapietra, do you have that information handy?
Sure. So, you know, roughly, I would say at this point, we're about 17% that are school choice funded. And, you know, out of the 466 students we have, we accept about, I would say, anywhere between 15 to 20 students per school year. So if you do the simple math there, it's about 17 to 18% of our students. That number has gone down over the past few years.
And I just want to add on the school choice piece. So there are throughout the district, K to 12, 164 school choice students, K to 12. And as Ms. Picapietra mentioned, that number was higher. So roughly 6 years ago, the number was around 200 school choice students. When Dr. Johnson joined the district, she made a conscious effort to work with the Department of Education to change our program from open enrollment to criteria-based enrollment. So there are academic and disciplinary requirements in order for students to become school choice enrollees. We see, you know, kids in the high school who have gone to school their entire lives in Hoboken, attending charter schools or private schools. Maybe they lived here at one time and have since moved just outside of the city, and they want to continue going to school with their friends who they've been with since they were little. So it's, you know, it's certainly made up of students who are very, very close to Hoboken. Okay, next question.
Hey, Sharon. Before
Yes.
we leave that one, I just wanted to weigh in on one thing with respect to school choice that I have, been thinking about, and that has, from the time I kind of became aware of school choice as a thing, that to me, and it's a little bit different than what we typically hear when people are talking about school choice, but that the families that choose to be school choice are choosing Hoboken, much the way some families choose a private school or choose some other alternative to their local district schools. And the families that are choosing to enroll their children in Hoboken tend to be really active participants, and the children are active participants in our school family, in our school community. So it's a different way of looking at school choice than maybe some people have traditionally looked at it. But I think in many cases are the people that are here, the children that are here in school choice seats are here and are really contributing in a significant way to our community.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Given the low elevation of land in that area, will the ground floor of the building be elevated out of the floodplain or flood-proofed in some way? If elevated, approximately how much higher will the ground floor, i.e. base flood elevation, be compared to the existing school? I would ask either Eric or Frank to talk about that.
Yeah, Eric, go ahead.
Yeah. So the base flood elevation at the JFK Stadium site is 12 feet above sea level. The design flood elevation is 1 foot above that, so it would be 13 feet. The first floor of the school will be at 15 feet above sea level. So it is 2 feet above the design flood elevation for that area of Hoboken.
Okay, thank you. Is there a less expensive option for a new high school? I'm going to just make a comment and then I can pass it over to the architects. Because we are building on land owned by the Board of Education, and it is on the site of our football field, there's really only one size building that can go there to accommodate a field on the roof, which is what we have proposed to you today. Eric or Frank, do you want to talk about cost and maybe talk about
Sure.
cost per square footage, as you
Yes.
mentioned, in the Northeast?
Yes, I mean, can you build a less expensive high school? Well, there's a couple of things that have to do that the function of cost. And one of them is the square footage that you're building. And number two are the programs that you have. And those two things create any type of building. But in a high school, you have multiple programs and you have a certain amount of square footage to house those. The measure that's used throughout the industry everywhere in the country is cost per square foot. And that means construction cost per square foot. A lot of times out there you hear they conflate the construction cost with the project cost, which includes other contingencies and soft costs. So the construction cost per square foot that we're projecting for next year is $500 a square foot, or very close to that, which by any standard throughout the industry for a high school is a very competitive price. Our firm has been around for 65 years and we're known for bringing in projects at or below the average cost of schools in their area. And that will be the case here.
Thank you. Let's see, where are we next? What is the plan for the high school athletics during construction while current high school field is not available? All of that information is in our referendum FAQ. The district, and I'll just say a little bit about it right now, the district will be in touch with obviously the city, with other local school districts, with nearby universities to coordinate field space use by our athletic teams. Okay, next question is for the bond counsel and financial advisor. If there are unexpected proceeds from unused contingencies, can you use the proceeds to call bonds this is being cut off, call bonds to reduce debt? Will the bonds be designated ESG green bonds to facilitate the sale of the bonds?
Sure, I can take the question. This is Tony Solomini from Lenz Goldman and Spitzer. The board is only authorized to spend the money that's appropriated and authorized in the bond proposal question, and it can only be used for the construction of the new high school. If bids come in and the actual costs come in lower, any money that has been issued for bonds has to be used towards the principal reduction of the bonds. So just by way of example, so hopefully this clarifies it. If next year the board has a $5 million principal bond payment and the board still has $10 million of remaining bond proceeds, $5 million of that $10 million would then be used to pay that principal payment that the board has that year. The following $5 million would be reserved and then used again the following year to pay principal. So if we issue the bonds and the costs come in lower, it has to be used to pay down the bonds as they mature as fast as possible.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. The sphere of science is an exciting addition to the academics facility. Can it be used for additional science courses beyond earth science? Does the district have plans to offer new courses because of this addition? For example, can it be used to model atoms in a chemistry class or used in an astronomy class? There is a new program associated with Science on a Sphere with NOAA, where students will focus on meteorology and forecasting. So that is an exciting new course that would be coming to Hoboken High School. Let's see. Next question. Sorry, let me see where we are. What is the capacity of the new high school? All the population growth in Hoboken doesn't mean population growth in future high school students. What if the yearly newly enrolled number stays fewer than 200 in 2026? It is a huge waste to spend so much money with so few students. Have you considered the percentage of people who have planned to move to the suburbs for the high school? I would suggest our demographic study that goes into all of the assumptions around enrollment projections and would show you enrollment growth that has taken place is on our district homepage. Have you conducted a study comparing the cost of the proposed school with schools built in the region, Jersey City, Union, etc.? Why is our school more expensive? I think Frank just did a good job explaining the cost per square foot. Frank, do you want to say anything else regarding specific schools in the area?
Well, it's very difficult to compare schools that have been funded probably 10 years ago. Remember, schools that are existing now and have a price tag, that's several years old. So you can't really, and you don't know whether it's project cost or construction cost. All we can say is that today, at approximately $500 a square foot, this is a competitive cost for schools across the board. So, comparing with what happened, 5-6 years ago, where they were doing maybe $425 a square foot, that's no longer the case. There's been inflation in construction, and there continues to be. So I think we're in a very competitive area in terms of the cost, and it's very difficult to look back and say when things were funded, what is included in that cost, and so forth, and how many square foot. It's really what's the cost per square foot. Look at how many years ago it was, and you'll find that we're right in line.
Okay, next question. Why wasn't the public involved with the entire planning process? Tim, I'm going to ask you to chime in on this, but schools have very specific criteria I should say the Department of Education has very specific criteria when it comes to building a school. Enrollment, programs, all of those need to be approved by the Department of Education. So coming together with a community built plan does not, there are many layers of approvals that the DOE has to go through. And, you know, I think building a school is very different than building a park, let's say. Tim, do you want to add anything to that? Tim, you're on mute, sorry.
When a school is being proposed, there's a very specific set of criteria that must be addressed. And the criteria and the development of the school has to be submitted to the DOE for approval. Much of the criteria, much of the specifications are not subject to revision or changes by a district. The size of a classroom is basically set by the Department of Education. The utilization of space is set by the minimum utilization of space is set by the Department of Education. So once we get the specifications approved by the Department of Education, the project becomes public. That's what we've been doing for the past 6 weeks. And I know that some people don't agree that that's a public process, but you have to go through the stages in order to get to where we are right now. And those stages really involve educational specifications that must be determined and met and submitted for approval before we go any further. And Frank, you may want to chime in as to what that process is with the Department of Education.
Frank, you're muted as well.
Yeah, Eric, why don't you pick that up?
Yeah, no, so it includes, you know, laying out the classrooms based on the amount of students in each room, and that goes for general classrooms. They look to confirm that the sizes meet the standards of the sizes in the Department of Ed standards. So it has to do with them reviewing the plans, making sure that all the educational aspects of a high school are met, and then they allow the district to move forward to the next steps.
President Angley, I just wanted to point out to all the participants that are watching home, please put all your questions in the Q&A section. If you raise your hand, you won't be brought into to ask a live question. You have to go through your Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question is emergency use of the school as a community facility. I've worked in the Wallace building during and after Sandy. It was the best refuge for many people, though as an old building, it didn't work out that well for a number of reasons. Would the new building also function as an emergency evacuation center in the event of floods, blackouts, etc.? Mr. Callaghan, could you take?
Yeah, having lived through Hurricane Sandy and some of the other natural disasters that we experienced in this neighborhood, we've learned quite a bit. The new facility will definitely serve as a shelter, as an emergency shelter. And the things that we learned from Hurricane Sandy and from 9/11 will guide us, or have guided us during the development process of this school. And we do anticipate that it will be a significant addition to our emergency preparedness as we go forward with this project.
Thank you. One of the presenters mentioned amenities that might be available to the public. I've lived in Hoboken for a few years and wasn't aware that the current high school has a pool that's available for public use. What is the plan to make sure the same situation doesn't carry forward with the new school? If these amenities are part of the cost, they should be part of the community benefit. I'm also concerned about keeping students safe and allowing their scholastic and extracurricular activities to take place while also allowing public use. Ms. McGurk, do you want to take this one?
I'm sorry, Sharon, I was typing a question to someone. Could you read it one more time? Or typing an answer to someone. Could you read it one more time?
Sure. You know what? I'll get you the next time around.
You want me to take it? I'll take it.
Sure, I definitely wasn't listening to you. My apologies.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Takirian, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely happy to try and answer it. Okay, so this is actually one question is a great segue into the next in terms of what this looks like. We do have a pool that is open, particularly in the summertime, for public use. And the goal and the expectation for the future facility is to make the public portions of the facility available to public use. We do talk a little bit about our current policy with respect to public access on the FAQ, and you might want to take a look at that. But we will be revamping that policy in terms of how to make the new facility as accessible as possible while still retaining the important use for students, both from the standpoint of making sure that they have access for their curricular and extracurricular activities, and also ensuring the safety and security of the students. So one of the things that'll happen as we move past the referendum is to start to engage on what the community use plan will look like. And that community use plan will be a combination of a few things. One would be obviously anything that the school district, the district ourselves, that we offer to the community. So for instance, let's say the ice rink, we likely have, open skate times. Those would be scheduled times, and there would be, public information both on our website and perhaps, we'd have to figure out where else to let people know about that. So that would be, the facilities, the access to the facilities that we'll make available. Likewise, we'll have the facilities available for use by the city of Hoboken, both the recreation department and as needed for other events that the city may want to hold. And then thirdly, as we do today, we will make the facilities available for kind of private use. So that could be sports leagues or, a theater company or whomever that may be. So our new policy will be certainly different than the one that we have today. The one that we have today probably will give you some context about how we do handle this currently, but the goal is really to have the school be accessible both through the programs or in three ways: through the programs we offer, through the programs that the city offers, and to private providers.
Thank you. And I just want to add, so the community facilities that have been planned and have been incorporated into the proposed new high school, they were done that way to benefit the students of the Hoboken Public School District, but also the community at large. And so, as Melanie mentioned, we will be going into a large-scale strategic planning process if, the referendum passes. But there is a lot of use of our facilities at this time. Unfortunately, with COVID, that has definitely slowed down a bit. But we offer our own programs to all students in the summer on the field. Our field is used by baseball, city rec baseball teams, and flag football, and rec soccer, and the rec basketball program. So our facilities are certainly used, and I think having these additional facilities will open up so much more to the students, the city, and the community. So thank you. Next question. Will the district continue to have a school choice option for those who do not live in Hoboken? I think we touched upon that. Right now, there are 164 school choice students K to 12. That number has gone down over the last several years. And as enrollment continues to grow, school choice availability will be evaluated and reduced to meet the needs of Hoboken residents. The district is not required by law to have a certain number of school choice students enrolled in the district. So as it goes up, that will be evaluated. Next question. There have been rumors that the school will be one of the most expensive built in the US. Where are we truly? Top 5 costliest or average cost of high schools, or the average cost of high schools? Frank, you touched upon this. I think there's, we have to look at square footage. Do you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think the cost of schools in the last 15 years has really gone up quite a bit in terms of cost per square foot. Some I've seen as high as $700, even $800 a square foot. But you know, for the average, I think you're looking at around at this time, and it's about 500 a square foot, and that's where we are projecting for next year with our contingency and our design contingency as well as escalation.
Okay, thank you. Next question, what types of plans does the BOE have in place to work with surrounding properties to ensure there's no detrimental issues to existing adjacent properties during construction?
Eric, you want to take that?
Yeah, Eric, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I know that we've spoken that there would be some additional seismic monitoring and groundwater substance monitoring to the surrounding areas. We would also, you know, prior to the project beginning, we would with the homeowners, you know, acceptance, you know, be able to take a look at the existing conditions in their place, to photograph that, make sure that you know, when the project is completed, that there was no damage done, so to say, during construction. So you know, we like I said, there would be an additional seismic monitoring and groundwater substance monitoring to the areas surrounding the site.
Frank, I know you've talked about this in some of our other meetings. Do you want to just touch upon the parking for workers, which would certainly impact those in the area of the construction site, and
Yes.
how you plan to include that in the bid package?
Well, we're going to require that the general contractor finds, or whichever contractor session it is, would find parking off-site for their workers and provide shuttle service to the site. We've done that on a few other projects. Now, we may work with the city if they have any sites that they make available. It could be in a neighboring community, whatever they can rent themselves, or that the district wants to look at and offer to those folks as part of the parking area, but they would be required to have most of their people park off-site and shuttle to the site.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Aileen, do you want to take this next one? It says you stress the city has no input into school matters. If the proposed high school is built, does that mean that the city and Hoboken residents will have no input on their access to the so-called community amenities? You mentioned revenues from amenities. What does that mean? And I think Melanie already touched on the first question.
Yes. So in terms of how the district engages with the city, obviously we host recreation. A large chunk of Hoboken recreation programs take place in district facilities. And as Melanie mentioned earlier, the Hoboken Board of Education is committed in entering into a long-range plan for how the community will be able to access these facilities, and looks forward to engaging the community on that plan. In terms of revenue from the facilities, schools are not a revenue generating operation. However, we do anticipate some revenues to be generated from some of the community amenities like the ice rink, and that would go back into our budget as miscellaneous revenue and be used to upkeep the facilities, etc. I don't know if Mr. Callaghy has anything to add to that answer. He might.
So I think what we will do, what we've been saying, and what will be the case, is that we will be coordinating our activities with the Hoboken Recreation Department. And as you know, we have used almost all of our facilities have been used for recreational facilities. And we anticipate working very closely with the City Recreation Department on the new facilities. What I want to touch base on too, when someone asked earlier about the access to the pool, what the difference between this school and the current high school, if you're familiar with the current high school, the pool is pretty much right smack in the middle of the school. What the design of this school has is that what we consider community facilities will be securely prevented from, well, participants in the community part of the building can be prevented from accessing the school itself. So by putting in security features such as gates, and et cetera, we'll be able to offer access to the community facilities much more readily than we have been able to do so in the existing high school.
Yeah, thank you. And just to add to that, so right now in across the district in the 3 elementary schools plus our early childhood learning center, the middle school and high school, there are only 2 full-size gymnasiums that are used all the time. This project would bring an additional 2 full-size gymnasiums to the district. So even, with working with the city to bring recreation into our schools, it would still allow for space for community use. And then just to touch upon the rink, the district has done its due diligence in speaking with local districts who do have rinks to review the financials, and not only do they seem to be self-sustaining, but they are profitable to cover the maintenance and operating costs of those facilities. Okay, next question. Is there an estimate for how much a similar project would cost without the ice rink? I'm just going to circle back to one of my earlier answers about the cost driver is really and Frank or Eric, correct me if I'm wrong or chime in, is the structure of the building and the size that it needs to be to house the field on the roof, as opposed to the amenities that are included inside that facility. Okay, how much interest cost? Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want to add anything to that?
I'm not sure what the question was. It was something about the cost of the ice rink. How much is that?
No, it just says, is there an estimate for how much a similar project would cost without the ice rink? And I just circled back to my earlier answer that the primary cost driver of the project is the physical structure of the building on the site of JFK and the need for housing the field and track on the roof of the building. And I just wanted to see if you had anything else to add there.
No, I think just cost per square foot would be the same. You about 15,000 square feet, including the rink and its locker rooms and support spaces. So, it'd be about 3 million or so for the ice rink.
Okay. And Mr. Callaghan, do you want to just touch briefly on, since we're talking about the cost of the ice rink, the profits that we've reviewed with an area district, because I think they are, the district would probably make its money back pretty quickly with the profit that other districts make with ice.
Yeah, we looked at a similar facility in Hudson County, and their income was roughly $600,000 a year during the COVID time. So, and at that with that revenue, they are well able to cover the cost of maintaining the rink and staffing the rink as necessary to meet their program needs. Obviously, because of COVID, those revenue numbers are, while significant revenue numbers, they're still lower than what they were prior to COVID. So we would anticipate that the revenue will be much higher once the pandemic passes. But even at pandemic rates, at pandemic incomes, we would be able to support the upkeep and the maintenance of the rink.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see. How much interest cost will be added to the project for every 50 basis point increase in interest rates? Who wants to take that? Tony or Risha?
We'll take that. I mean, I don't have that off the top of my head, but we can certainly work a number up and give it to the district so you can put it on your fact sheet.
Okay, that would be great.
But interest rates are rising and they have risen since the first of the year.
Thank you. Okay, what would change in the curriculum or academic offerings in the new school? Ms. Pick, do you want to talk about a little bit about the curriculum offerings at the current high school? Because many of those programs will carry forward into the new school. We do have some additional vocational programs that will be added to the program of studies in the new building. And we also have Science on a Sphere, which we talked about. But Ms. Pick, if you want to talk about our current programs and how they will be enhanced in this new building, that would be great.
Sure. So I think, our sciences are a fabulous part of the program of studies at Hoboken High School. Most notably our Project Lead the Way sciences. So those being the biomedical science, the computer science, and the engineering. I think what we're currently offering is quite diverse. And the ability to move on in those programs to second, third, and fourth year programs. We've offered pre-AP programming this year to complement our already existing AP programs. The culinary arts program we offer here, our video program we offer here, all great engaging programs in both the elective fields and in the academic fields. So I think, what we do here already through everything we're working on, our debate club, we're quite successful. Our theater club, we're quite successful. All these things we're doing very well at. I think the new high school will just enhance the programs that already exist. And, when you're looking 3 years forward, I can only imagine what new offerings we could have and what technology will, allow us to do in a new building. So I think our current program of studies is quite expansive and on par, not better than a lot of our, local other schools, not even local, but just throughout the state of New Jersey. So I think we do a great job with what we have here. We offer a wide array of things to meet the interests of all students. So I think this new building will only enhance that, and we'll see what else we can do once we get there.
Thank you. And just to note, the high school program of studies, along with a high school graduation requirement and achievements document, are linked on our district homepage. So it's worth checking those out. The other point I just wanted to make regarding the programs is that Ms. Picapietra mentioned the Project Lead the Way science program, and computer science, biomedical science, and engineering are all graduation requirements for all students at Hoboken High School. And then if the students choose to move on in those pathways, they can certainly do so. But they are being operated out of science labs that were created in 1972, is it? Or
yes.
So, having the proper facilities would really enhance those programs that are already being offered.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Was a pedestrian study ever done? I know a car study was, but that was during COVID and doesn't really apply to an urban town like Hoboken. Frank or Eric, would you like to?
Yeah, Eric.
The traffic study was done, as said in the question. A pedestrian study was not completed, but it is something that we would look into further as the project develops.
Okay. Where are your revenue projections available to be viewed? as Mr. Delatorre said, we are not projecting out 3 years in operating budget. Do you, Alex, want to just circle back and touch on that point again?
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, that's correct. We're not going to be able to project right now. Our school business administrator, is there for a reason to project revenue. Sorry, not revenue, to project, the operating budget for our school for the following school year. There are so many variables in terms of, enrollment. There are variables in terms of, costs and facilities that, although have been very stable over the last 3 years, right? Projecting 3 years out it does not seem like a reasonable projection at this time. Once that school is online, once Demarest is back online after their renovation, and taking into consideration the efficiencies via the LEED Gold, I think it's a more applicable time to forecast, what our costs are going to be.
Thank you. And just to add to that, the district does not have free rein to increase the local tax levy at their discretion. The BOE has set limits around those things and controls what can and cannot be increased, what we can increase taxes for. One of those things are enrollment growth, healthcare costs, but the Department of Education does not issue waivers for the school district to increase our local tax levy for operating expenses, which is why it's very important to, hear what Mr. Callaghy said about the rink, because I know that's been a big concern as far as the cost of maintaining it. And it is a self-sustaining facility, so it seems.
Hi,
Okay.
Sharon. I just want to answer a question that keeps coming up in the Q&A.
Sure.
And once I answer it, I'm going to go through and dismiss all the similar questions. And it has to do with if the referendum is approved and the middle schoolers move from Demarest into the current Hoboken High School, what's going to happen to that building? There is not a lot that has to happen to that building for it to become a middle school. There would be some repairs, typical stuff that's done year in and year out, but there isn't any wholesale changes that need to be done to that building for it to be a very successful middle school. And Mr. Callaghy can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of been our plan, as we've discussed this.
The requirements for a middle school are very similar to the requirements of a high school. So there are no major renovations that need to take place in order to accommodate the middle school. As you know, at one point recently, the middle school was actually housed in the high school. So what we do have, we recently received a grant from the SDA to do some improvements to the school, and we'll be using approximately $300,000 to upgrade things, bathrooms, water fountains when we're allowed to use water fountains again, things like that. We'll be using some grant money that we have available to us, but there are not major renovations necessary in order to accommodate the middle school at the existing high school.
Thank you.
Sharon, if I might, since there's been so many questions on operation, another big point is that state law doesn't permit anything over a 2% increase in operation costs and tax increase for operations on a school district on an annual basis.
And that 2% is on the local tax levy. So that doesn't mean a 2% increase in your taxes. That is a 2% increase on the base number, which is the school tax levy.
Correct. Correct.
And as I discussed, there are certain waivers that the DOE will allow you to take over and above that 2%, including enrollment, healthcare benefits, pension costs, I believe. But those waivers do not include operating expenses. So we would have to work within our budget to make this work. Okay, does schematic design mean 60% designed? Also, what allowance in the budget is made for urban soil? Needing more pilings as well as polluted. Related to that, is there a budget being set aside or planned for vibration monitoring and shoring of adjacent buildings, etc.?
Yes, we have plans for monitoring, as Eric mentioned earlier, both for seismic and for groundwater monitoring. What was the first part of the question? Had to do with
Does schematic design mean 60% design?
No, we have design contingencies and escalation amounts in our schematic design cost estimate. So it represents about 20% at this point of the design effort, 15 to 20% of the design effort. The rest of it will happen over the next year.
Okay, yeah, I think the question is, so does the schematic design mean 60% designed?
No, it means about 20% design.
Okay. Okay, have you planned financially for a potential environmental cleanup at the site? Have any preliminary soil samples been tested already? I'm not sure who wants to take this, Mr. Callaghy or Frank or Eric.
I think, Eric, maybe you want to address that. We did do soil sampling on the site. Sampling was submitted to what was conducted by our environmental engineers. There will be information posted on the FAQ, and there is an outline, and Eric, you may want to take this, as to how we'll proceed as far as monitoring the historic fill that's on the site.
Yeah, Tim, as you said, there's the soil samples prove, much like much of Hoboken, that there's historic fill underneath the ground. So the impacts from the soil from the historic fill will be addressed with capping of the new structure, asphalt and pavement, and that's all pursuant to the DEP rules and regulations and guidance. Any potential impacts to the groundwater will be planned in the design of the new structure. And, as we said earlier, that first floor is 15 feet above sea level. So it would accommodate the parking and students for the staff. Also, there'll be additional measures employed during construction that Frank had brought up just a little while ago about vibration and survey points for a monitoring plan.
Thank you. Next question is, even if they plan for 3 years from now to renovate Demarest, what if the high school takes more than 3 years? It's not unlikely given the shortage of labor and materials and the never-ending COVID surges we seem to be experiencing. So my question, is it possible that children will be bussed out of town regardless? Mr. Callaghy, you may want to weigh in. My understanding is that the SDA, through district conversation, is on board with the timing of this. If this referendum,
the SDA is, when they decided to undertake the Demarest project, one of the first things they began to do was look for swing space for the existing the students that are in the building. The SDA is very aware of this project that we're proposing, and they're looking forward to using the existing high school, as the new home for the middle school. So they are prepared to wait should there be any construction delays because of materials and because of the current COVID situation. But yes, the funds are committed to that project, and they still have work that they need to do to prepare that project. So their planning will be running simultaneous to our construction plan should the project be approved, and they will be very patiently waiting, and we will not be sending students out of town should there be any delays.
I could add to that, we are planning an early site package, which would take, in other words, putting the pilings in as soon as this summer, so that a lot of the early work will be done prior to the time of a general contractor coming on. So that's how we're going to try to reduce the duration of the major construction by doing the early site package.
Thank you. Next question, have you or are you attempting to receive any funding from the state or federal government to help fund construction? I can talk a little bit about the SDA and Hoboken being a former Abbott district, or Tim, you are well versed in this, this topic. Do you want to take that?
The SDA currently, as I think everyone knows, they don't have any available funding that would fund the high school in Hoboken. They've released a significant amount of funding to districts throughout the state recently. What that really yielded was a small grant package for Hoboken. As I think I said before, that money would be used for upgrading the existing high school for middle school use. The SDA hasn't floated any major bonds that would be able to support our project as well as other projects around the state. So yes, we did explore all of the SDA funding that was currently available and not available before we move forward with this project. And as is always the case, public funding for all of our activities are always explored. And unfortunately, there was no SDA or Abbott, former Abbott School District funding available for this project.
Thank you. Next question, does the district receive payment from the state for school choice students? Yeah, so the district's school choice program is funded a little bit differently than out of town students who attend charter schools. So in our district, school choice funding comes directly from the state. And my understanding is that the districts that they are coming from, their funding would be adjusted via their state funding from the state. And then from a charter school perspective, if they have students that are from out of town, those students are funded from their local municipality, meaning if somebody comes from Jersey City pays that tuition, let's call it. Next question. Great new amenities for the community, pool, ice rink, gym, etc. Will free parking be available? Is there a guarantee from the school board district that these will all be available to the public in a significant way? I think we've touched upon that tonight, that the board is committed to engaging the community to develop and hear about how to prioritize facility use. When these amenities were developed and included in the project, the intent was for community use, hence the community entrance. So that will be, if the referendum passes, a community discussion. Let's see, next question. In the budget, there is about 11 million for construction, contract, documents, and administration. Can you provide more details what that means exactly? The administration of the project seems very high. Mr. Bacher, do you want to take that one? Or whoever would be the appropriate person to answer that question?
Yeah, that wouldn't be me.
I think Frank.
Well, I'm not sure where in the budget. There is construction contract administration during construction where we have people in the field basically monitoring and assisting with the free flow of information on the project to make sure things are getting done properly and that all the specified materials are being put in place in a workmanlike manner. So there's a whole 2 years of construction administration that happens.
Okay, thank you. What are the expected interest rate of the bond, as the presumption that the Fed increasing six times already is included for the most part in the market interest rates? Is there any financial analysis done by a professional to account for delaying by 1 year to avoid the supply disruption? Mr. Walker?
Yeah, I can answer that. We've been running numbers in a 30-year bond scenario at 2.2%. We still think that that is a good number. It is true that the Fed is talking about raising interest rates, and then probably interest rates will rise. If this referendum is approved, probably the earliest we can get out into the marketplace would be April or May. Hopefully the 2.2% will still be a good number. We haven't done a projection on what the impact would be if interest rates start rising before we can get into the bond market. But again, we can do that. Once a referendum is approved, there would be a more detailed conversation on exactly how the bonds and the financing would be structured. There's other things that we can be doing to try and negate the cost of a rising interest rate environment. For example, maybe not issuing bonds right away, but issuing notes or getting into the market as fast as we can. Those are the kinds of analysis that we would do once a referendum is approved and we start putting together a detailed financing plan.
Thank you. You mentioned money not spent will be returned to taxpayers. It is my understanding that the bond will just be paid off early, but that annual taxes will not go down. Can you clarify? Back to you, Mr. Bacher.
Yeah, I think that Mr. Salamini touched on this as well. If for some reason there is monies left over after construction, it is required that those monies be used to pay down principal. It doesn't mean that the term of the bond gets reduced, but it would mean that there would probably be some kind of a good impact to the taxpayer in the year that money's used to pay off debt service. But the term of the bonds remains the same. When they're issued, the term is set, the interest rate is set, and your annual debt service cost you'll know for the next 30 years, and it won't change.
Okay, thank you. Next question says, can you go back to how many students who currently attend Hoboken High School do not live in Hoboken? I am texting with people who are not sure that school choice, including myself. Are Jersey City taxes transferred to Hoboken to, I'm sorry, my chat's getting, to cover those students, I believe it says. My chat is cut off. No, as I just mentioned, school choice, the school choice program in the Hoboken Public School District is funded. Funding for those students comes from the state, as opposed to, you may be thinking of a charter school out of Hoboken resident who attends one of the 3 charter schools. The funding for that student, which is not through the school choice program, is funded through Jersey City or whatever municipality they come from. And I believe, Ms. Picapietra, if you could just confirm, I believe you said 17% of the students.
I wanted to interrupt. It's actually 24% of our student body at Hoboken.
So that would be roughly
about 100
at the high school, at Hoboken High School.
Hoboken High School, yeah.
So about 93 students.
Roughly, yeah.
Okay.
My computer's frozen. I'm trying to calculate it, but I'm stuck. But I'm pretty confident with the 25%.
Is this going to be a competitive or negotiated deal? Are bonds going to be structured as serials plus terms out to 30 years? Are you planning to get the bonds enhanced by the New Jersey School Guarantee Program or any additional insurance, AGM or BAM, for bond counsel or financial advisors?
Sure, I can start off the answer and then Mr. Bacher can pick up. According to New Jersey state law, the bonds have to be sold via competitive sale. So we're not allowed to negotiate a new money sale. The way we set up competitive sales in New Jersey, ensuring the bonds would be at the bidder's option and at the bidder's expense. And I think the last part of your question, there's a program in New Jersey called the New Jersey School Bond Reserve Act, which basically provides additional security to school bonds to give investors basically additional comfort that school districts will make their principal and interest payments on the bonds. So all bonds issued in New Jersey are technically secured by that School Bond Reserve Act.
And
Thank
that kind of covers the answer. Thanks, Tony.
And then this is going to be our last question. We've answered over 100 questions tonight. We still have a number of open questions, about 60, and we will answer those and have them posted within our FAQ. But last question, which may have just been addressed, will bonds be designated as ESG or green bonds?
That's something that we'll take a look at once a referendum's approved and we put together a detailed financing plan. If in fact there's enough energy saving program and projects in this particular project and that it can be designated green, it's worthwhile to do it. I think somebody raised the question earlier. There is a slightly broader field for people to buy these bonds if in fact they are green bonds, and we will certainly look into that once we start putting together the detailed plan.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope this was informative and that we were able to answer your questions. Like I said, additional questions that are out there will be addressed and posted, and have a wonderful night.
And we can continue to answer questions at the proposed new HHS at hoboken.k12.nj.us email address. So you can also email us there if you have a question that you didn't get to put into the chat.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.